what is the most difficult, maybe I should say, aspect of recovery for you?
So, I'll start with this. Like I said, I came from a different. We had a great family. We didn't know at the time as kids. I was the oldest of four boys. There was only 6 years apart between us, so we drove my mother absolutely crazy. This was in the '60s and the '70s,
Yes.
and we acted all the time like Three Stooges and Bugs Bunny and all the cartoons and stuff that we had that we were watching. That's how we behaved, and we drove my mother crazy.
Yeah.
I grew up in a family that wasn't. I don't want to use the word gifted. Wasn't skilled in sharing and expressing emotions,
Mhm.
and so I never learned as a child how to share what was on my mind. And in fact, when I did have opportunities to do that, it backfired on me because I get things like slaps across the face, for asking silly questions that I thought were important. And so anyway, I don't want to throw my parents under the bus because I love them both and I made amends to both of them before they passed. But excuse me, I grew up in a rural town, rural side of town, and I started experimenting with alcohol and drugs when I was 14. And that's around the time that I started to rebel against my parents. Lived in a neighborhood where there was woods connecting a whole bunch of different cul-de-sacs. And so we had paths through the woods and so forth. So we had a group of boys and girls, 14 and 15 years old, that spent summers together, spent weekends together, and we drank and we smoked weed. And this is in pit parties. But I soon found that weed, cannabis, marijuana, weed, whatever I'm supposed to call it on this show, was my solution to my problems. Um, Music sounded better, food tasted more, it tasted better. My inhibitions were lowered. Nobody ever fought. There was no fighting in the woods when people were smoking dope. When we drank, it was a different issue. So alcohol allowed me to cope with a lot of my childhood issues and allowed me to fit in. And it continued into college. I lived in a fraternity for 4 years. While I was in college, my brother passed of cancer after a long, long, long battle. And the day after my brother passed, I went back to school and I anesthetized myself in my fraternity life as well as through my studies. I went to engineering school, so I had to. So in any event, all of those coping mechanisms carried with me into my early adulthood. I got married at 26. And that's 42 years ago, and I'm still married, although we're having some difficulties, but nonetheless, I carried that behavior into my early marriage. And then I had to hide it because it wasn't approved of. It was frowned upon. So I would go a year, and I went 8 years once without picking up any drugs and any alcohol or anything. Just try white knuckling it, and that didn't work because I was always, always, always thinking about when it was going to be safe for me to be able to do what I wanted to do. Long story short, in the 2012, I decided that I couldn't cope anymore. I mentioned how I checked into the local behavioral health unit, went out to California to get treated, came back, and I've been clean and sober ever since. And how that happened is that I basically walked the same talk that I'm giving. I reached out to others. I got involved. I started a nonprofit. I left the corporate world where I worked for 37 years and I help people in recovery find jobs. I've helped them. I started the Recovery Friendly Workplace program in the state of Maine. I founded that and I managed that. And I just got to know a whole bunch of people that were kind, that were struggling themselves in the past and relied on me and relied on others. And there was a mutual community of respect and support. I still go to an AA meeting 7 days a week. 7 days a week. I've been sober for 13 years. I go to a 7 a.m. meeting during the weekdays, and I go to morning meetings. I do a radio show, so I'm doing something that I love. It's a musical program that I do in a community radio station. Community. They're the media partner of the coalitions that I mentioned. And I'm just living and doing the things that I like to do under the safety of kindness from countless others who have expressed an interest in working with me. Community is what kept me sober.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. And so it sounds like you're
I'm not
how
unique, by the way. I want to make sure that you understand. You said that's incredible. It's not unique. There are
mm,
countless others that have done the same thing that I've done by doing the same things that I'm doing.
wow. And how important is that to, and you mentioned things that you love to do,
Ah,
and this, that imposter syndrome that you had in your work. So where does that, I think of like people's strengths. I've written and talked about that a lot, our strengths and our gifts. Does that play a part in
yes,
recovery, do you think?
it does. And it absolutely does, Gail. I've landed where I'm supposed to be.
Hmm.
Now, I have the benefit of being retired and having retirement benefits coming in and so forth. So
Yeah.
I'm not in this to make money. I'm in this to help people.
Yeah.
So my passions are my radio show for sure, which I've been doing for 13 years. You think there's a coincidence? It's not a
Yeah,
coincidence that as long as
exactly.
I've been sober, I've been doing this radio program, and it's the love
Mhm.
of my life. It's fun preparing for it. I do a
Mhm.
3 hour show on Sunday mornings, and it's rock, it's punk, it's hard rock, it's all kinds of great stuff.
Mhm.
Music from my childhood. I'm all over the map, and it's called Scurvy Dog Radio, which is kind of my tag. But other thing, I love being outdoors, four seasons. I love being outdoors. I love being in the woods, deep, deep, deep woods off the trail, and
Yeah.
just sitting and just taking it in. I'm a fly fisherman. I go hunting with my son. Those are the things that I love to do. I just love being with my family, and so I don't know if that answered your question, but being sober and clean and sober has allowed me to really lean into these things that are so good for me and safe for me and bring me strength and gratitude.
Mhm. I'm glad you're doing that. And I guess I was thinking that, something I believe, being a student of positive psychology as well, um, that, if we did that more often, if we really just, instead of being maybe think we need to go certain directions that people are telling us to move in, if we really think about our gifts, our unique quirks and things that only we have and can do, and we try and use those and be involved in those as much as possible. I think that's just so healthy.
It's
And that's
being accepted. It's being accepted by others.
yeah.
I'm one of several, but I'm a contributing member of that several. I, you know, I recognize other people for what they bring to the equation. It just, what I try to do people ask me, how do you what's your fundamental ingredient for staying connected and staying, in a recovery status? And for me, it's just surrounding myself with kind people, which means I do no social media except for LinkedIn, and I do that to promote the book. And I've cultivated my followers and so forth around this topic of mental health, community, and recovery. So that's all
Mhm.
I see. The other stuff I block. I
Mm.
don't do Facebook. I don't do Instagram. I don't do X. I don't do Substack. I did Substack for a while and it turned into a time suck. But so what I do, and I don't begrudge anybody that uses any of those things. For me,
No.
it's not healthy
Yeah.
because I can quickly go down a rabbit hole of trying to like engage with people that don't think like me. I don't have the time for that at this point in my life.
That sounds really healthy. Um, let's go back to prevention, I think, because I just think that's, well, you probably agree, is really the most important thing.
It is.
Um, what do you think we can do in say in our families? Let's just talk right about the family unit. Do you think there are some things we can do to, help better the odds of our kids um, not moving into that direction?
Yeah, I think it comes down to communication. There's that root word, calm again, commune.
Yeah.
I think it comes to communication and allowing your kids to be transparent, give them safety in the home so they can talk to you and to be able to ask questions or even state their opinions without having to be influenced by parental thinking. Let them grow into their best person. And I think it also involves letting them stretch, letting your kids stretch into things that, that they may not want to go down the same career path as you. That's okay.
Yeah.
They want to have friends, and they're going to reflect. Your kids are going to reflect the example that you set for them in the home. And again, I go back to families that don't have both parents or neither parent. And how do we provide for them so that they can find a place to be heard and welcomed? And that's where those community assets that provide opportunities for development and connection for those kids. But it comes back, I think, to taking your arguments as spouses outside of the unit so that they don't
Mhm.
have to see those things, and putting on a unified front when confronting difficulties. Our kids are going to make mistakes. Allow them to make mistakes.
Mhm.
They're going to come up with their own coping mechanisms, and allow them to stretch so they can develop resilience.
Yeah.
We haven't used the word resilience yet, but it's
Mm.
resilience against things that they're going to see in school, they're going to see on the streets, and so forth. Build that resilience, build that confidence, allow them to make informed decisions about the choices
Mhm.
that they make in life.
Mhm. Absolutely. Resilience is so key. And, I often talk about, and I did with parents many times, and I write about it now about when you mention, giving kids responsibility, if you want them to be responsible, you have to give them some responsibility. And then, of course, they're going to make mistakes and they're going to stumble, but then
But
they
they'll
can
grow. They
they'll
can grow.
grow, right? And then they can look back and say, I did it. Like I figured that out that time. I didn't think I could do it, and I did. And when we take away all the obstacles like that, I don't know if you've heard of lawnmower parents, not even helicopter parents, but lawnmower parents, where they
I never heard
mow
that.
down, yeah, they mow down all possible obstacles in front of their kids, which
Ah,
you
so
can
they're in
probably
front of their kids with the lawnmower.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
so that
get it. I get it.
they don't have any obstacles to go through, and so therefore, they don't build that resilience that we all need so
Yeah.
much, and I think that's a
Yes.
huge problem right
Yep.
now when people, it's with the best of intentions, you wanna
Right.
help your kids, but you're not helping them in the long run. So
Right. And
I
resilience applies not only to the kids, but it also
yeah,
applies to the family unit.
mhm, yeah.
Like I said, my brother passed when I was 21. He was 18. He had a 3-year
Yeah.
battle. I
Oh,
had absolutely no opportunity to be resilient following that because I never had any example. It destroyed my family. It
mm,
destroyed my family.
oh,
And the resilience at the individual level and resilience at the family level, but
yeah,
resilience also is at the community level. How do
mm,
you how do you raise recovery capital so that the community can be resilient against this addiction crisis, or if it's climate change, or if it's teenage prevalence of teenage suicides, or tobacco, whatever that is? What are the assets in that community that can come together in a coordinated fashion to build a resilient face to allow people to ask for help, provide them with opportunities to get that help? And once they get that help, how do we provide them with a continuing path to continue to grow in their recovery from whatever that is?
yeah, that you make me think about sustainability too,
Mm.
that when you're building capacity and then, how is it going to be sustained? So there has to be what I think is, there has to be continued real ways for people to be involved and to
That
bring their
takes
strength,
investment.
right?
That takes
Yeah.
investment. I mean, a lot of these grants that these nonprofit community-based organizations or even for-profit hospitals and treatment centers and so forth, those
Mhm.
funding those funding cycles are 12 or 18 or 24 months. The
Yeah,
problem does not go away after 12
right.
months. It
Exactly.
doesn't go away.
Hmm. So what's we'll move on to I've got a couple more questions for you, but just before we leave this topic, I think it's really interesting. What do you think communities can do to kind of ensure that sustainability, like you said about the
Yep.
funding cycle? So
Yep.
what are a couple of tips you can give on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my experience has been that the community let's take a town or a city. They need to have a budget line item. They need to have a budget line item in their
Mm,
annual budget to invest in community welfare, not just
yeah.
welfare with a capital W,
Yes.
but with programs for homelessness, programs
Mhm.
for treatment and recovery, programs for food access, especially during these difficult times. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. I think there has to be a line item budget, whatever community, municipality, town, city, metropolis, whatever you want to call it, even state.
Hmm. Hmm.
Secondarily, grant cycles need to be multi-year.
Mm.
Grant, the charitable foundations, the philanthropists and so forth. I think they have to think long-term, develop relationships in the organizations they're investing in so that they're continuing to make those investments. And then for the organizations to have a diverse portfolio of incoming grants, donations, foundations. A lot of local banks community banks have a mission to set aside a certain amount of their profit for community organizations. So for the organizations like nonprofits, have a diverse portfolio of incoming money and invest in a development director so that they can have a
Mm.
relationship with donors so they can see your long-term
Mm.
strategy. So I
Yes.
don't know if any of that made sense, but that's
It
kind of been my
does.
experience.
That makes perfect sense to me, and I love that you said talked about you had the word relationship in there. So that's so key to almost everything, right? Because then
Right?
if you don't have that
It's not a
relationship,
transaction.
yeah, exactly.
Donors need to understand what your long-term strategy is
Yeah.
and have transparency in terms of outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. And then trust is built, right?
Yes, very much
Most
so.
most important thing. Um, so what are you working on now, Mark? Are you still doing the same, the things that you were doing with the coalition? What does your work
No,
look like now?
I'm retired. My
Okay.
full-time focus is on getting the message out about recovery ready communities. So I
Mm-hmm.
attend events as a keynote or as a speaker or
Mm-hmm.
I do workshops. I'm going to be developing training modules. I'm going to be
Oh,
developing training modules so that communities can have access to the methodologies that we use in Portsmouth and give them a place to start. So a companion to the book. There's a 20 episode podcast series that's a companion to the coalition and I don't know what's the most appropriate way to have that available to you in this
yeah.
podcast, but it's
Hmm.
it's basically I did that as part of the community radio station. So
Yeah.
it's called It Takes a Village: Addiction Prevention and Recovery on the Seacoast.
Yeah,
And
and it's
all of
like
the
19
stakeholders
episodes.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's 19 episodes, and
Yeah.
each of the major stakeholders at the table for the coalition spent 45 minutes with me to talk about what they did
Oh,
in the
yeah.
coalition, why they came on board. And,
Wow.
it's a little bit dated. It's about a year ago that I completed this,
Hmm.
but I'm still evangelizing the message. I'm doing a lot of, I'm still learning more, by the way. If I had to write this book, in fact, it'll probably eventually be a second edition because there's
Yeah.
so much more that I've learned from places like North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Maine, and so forth, where a lot of this work is being done. But I hope to be able to travel around and continue to do the message.
Sounds good. And I can put a link to the podcast in the show
Okay.
notes because I listened to a couple of those episodes and they were great.
Thank
Really,
you.
really good.
Thank you.
So I think I'm going to read this quote now to you and have you respond to it in any way that you wish. And I picked a quote from Richard Wagamis, who is, well, I just got shivers when I say his name. Oh, I'll probably cry, but he's just such a beloved and brilliant Indigenous Canadian author, essayist. And he struggled with addiction as a young man. And he died of um, cancer at 61 just a few years ago. And it was really, really traumatic for Canadians for sure. So, one of the things he wrote is this: I understand that when you miss a thing, it leaves a hole that only the thing you miss can fill. And I don't know, it just jumped out to me, and I thought you might have something interesting to say about that quote.
It's really easy for me.
Okay.
My brother.
Hmm.
I still carry. Now you can make me cry.
Oh, oh, so
There's a hole that
tragic.
he left in my life that
Mm.
only he can fill.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
And
Oh, and
the
I'm,
way I deal with that is to honor him.
mm,
And I'm not always I have not always honored him, but
mm.
I've made amends to him. And I was his caretaker for the last 6 or so months.
Oh, were you? Oh, so tragic. You said he was 18 years old. Is that
He
right?
was a football star, and he was about
Oh,
110 pounds when he passed.
oh, so sorry.
Yeah, but that, it happened almost 50 years ago.
Mm,
It's like 45 years, and it happened like it was yesterday. I've never recovered from it.
mm.
So that's the hole that only he can fill.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I have
Yeah,
two
let's
final,
let's gather ourselves here.
yeah, gather ourselves together. Whew, so I have two questions for you at the end that I ask everybody, but is there anything else that you really want to make sure we touched on today that I didn't ask you about? Anything else that you want to add?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
spread the message. Spread
Mm,
the message that prevention, recovery, treatment is all possible in any place if the right people come together and start talking about that one thing that they're going to collaborate on to address that issue.
mm,
Prevention, treatment, recovery, homelessness, food insecurity, financial insecurity, workforce, climate change, whatever that issue is, it's possible to bring like-minded people together and address that. And you don't have to start from square one. You can learn from the mistakes or the learnings from other people.
mm.
And there are other people out there besides myself that are spreading the message. You've interviewed some of them. Seth Kaplan, as an
Yeah.
example, he was a key advisor to me as I wrote in the part of the book that I wrote about communities and neighborhoods, the community, the connective tissue of communities.
Yeah. Yeah. His work is phenomenal. Yeah, such great work being done in that area of community right now. Absolutely. And I'm so happy to be within that circle, and you are definitely. So here are the final two questions I ask. I really believe in that idea. Well, it's not even an idea, it's research based, but what we focus on grows, and what we what we think about expands. That's just science. So with
It's
the
the
under
ripple effect.
it is,
In
yeah,
my world, in my language, it's the ripple
the
effect.
ripple effect. Okay. So with that understanding, so with the understanding that what we shine light on grows, that's how I say it. If we imagine a world in which we were all to focus more on fostering love and connection, such as in the ways we focused on here today, what do you think we might see?
I thought about this. I thought about this a lot.
Mhm.
And for me, it's really, really simple. Every person has a basic right to a roof over their head, access to food, and access to health care.
Mm,
And if we had every person within our sphere of influence that can have access to those things, the world would be a kinder place.
mm, mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. And Mark, the last question is just one or two thoughts that you hope listeners, if you had to pare it all down, that you hope listeners take away from our talk today.
Community recovery is possible, and communities do not have to start at, they don't have to try to figure this out on their own.
Mhm.
They can rely on either people like me or other thought leaders or other people that are included in your audience.
Mhm.
Um, there's there's work that's out there that allows you to fast track to building a coalition to start thinking about what's that one thing, what's that one urgent thing that you're going to address as a community in a collaborative way.
Mm. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, Mark.
Thank you. It's been a
Really,
pleasure. Thank you, Gail.
thank you.